Hey guys, I am really excited because I have a live Wife of the Party coming up at Zany's in Nashville on April 14th. I hope you can join me. I am super excited. We're working on a special guest. That'll be announced sometime soon. And you can get tickets at nashcomedyfest.com or the link is in the description here.
When I got here in LA, I moved into a stripper colony.
What is a stripper colony?
He's blessed to have you.
He is.
He's blessed to have you.
I'm blessed to have him too. We have a really good partnership.
Yes, I get
as
that.
humans.
Of course, I get that. But I've also seen the Lord. Oh, sure. A lot of guys don't have that.
You're right. Well, your husband's lucky to have you.
He is lucky to have me, especially because, I think I saved his life one day. I mean, I'm on the phone with him. It was one of those days, the day before my kid is going to school, and they would let you drop the stuff off. I think he was like in second grade. And I called him and I said, it's the last day of school or last day of summer before school. Do you want to go to lunch? And he was slurring. And I said, what are you drinking? He doesn't drink, especially not in the daytime. I mean, he drinks, but like not at noon. And I go, you drunk? And he goes, no, I can't move my mouth. And, I'm a nurse's daughter. I'm psycho. I read all those things. And I was like, smile. I go, raise your arms over your head, which are the signs of stroke. And he's like, I can't smile. And I was like, I'll be right there, because it was faster for me to get to him to the emergency room than an ambulance. And we got him the shot, but his face still never has come back, which has been difficult for him. Mm-hmm. Not for me, because I still think he's hot, but
right.
As much as I said, here's a great part of getting old together is my eyes are getting bad as my face is falling off. So you won't notice and I won't notice either.
That's really funny. So, but why did he have a stroke? How old was he? He was young.
Yeah, because he's only 2 years older than me, and this is 4 years ago, 50. He's a heavy smoker.
Oh, okay.
I think also he's genetically inclined to it. He's still in shape or anything like that. But, I think some people just have those things. Stress is tough, small town. He's a big Brooklyn boy living in a small town. He wasn't used to everybody being in his business and in his life, I think. I think that got to him a little bit. And I don't know. Thank God I saved him, though. There are sometimes, too, I go, you're so lucky, because if I didn't love you, I'd just hung up the phone and said, I'll talk to you later.
Right? Good luck with that slur.
I know.
Clearly you had a little too much for lunch. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Thank God I haven't had any kind of serious health problems with Bert or Bert with me. That would be so scary, I would think, to be in something like that with your spouse at that young of an age.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's been really, I got diagnosed with lung disease last year. And
what is lung disease? What does that mean?
Well, he's a heavy smoker, but no, it's not because of him. He doesn't smoke by me. Because, LeeAnn, I've been doing this. Next year will be 30 years. I used to be on stage Tuesday through Sunday, right? 3 shows on Saturday with 300 people blowing their smoke at us.
Yeah.
At us,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And literally you'd have to cut through the thing. Sometimes you'd go like this. You'd make those stupid jokes. What are you smoking, a ham? I remember, being pregnant. Now, what's this, 2008? And of course I had to work until the day before I gave birth, because
right,
like the kid doesn't come out with a wallet. There's no maternity money. And
right.
I would say, could I just not have smoking in the front row? And people would complain about not smoking in the front row when clearly I'm out here.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
30 years?
30 years next year. Yeah.
That's
I know
amazing.
I should have a way better career.
No, I'm not saying that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I really worked my way up from open mic. I was 10 years on the road before I even came to LA. I had never done, my first TV show was 10 years in, and it was The Tonight Show. So,
wow.
Yeah, I was petrified.
I was going to ask, how was that?
I was really petrified, and I was sitting backstage, and I was like, I don't think I can do this. Even though I knew I was ready, but I was scared, right? Like you usually work something little to work your way up. And then all of a sudden, like the the commercial for Friends came on, and that was the year they were ending. And I thought, wait a second, no one knew these people. There's not somebody, you have to start somewhere. And I looked at the audience, and there's only 200 people in the Tonight Show audience. Mm-hmm. Who cares if there's 5 million watching? I can make 200 people laugh.
Right.
And then it was like, which is how I had to approach it when I was with you guys, with those big shows.
Right.
You know that you don't think about the entirety of 15,000 people watching. Just remember that you can make people laugh. So hopefully collectively they get it.
They did. Our audience loved you.
Oh, that's awesome. I had such a good time.
Didn't you feel that way?
I felt it was wonderful. I just loved everything. It was comedy camp. We don't get those things.
Right.
Everybody was great. Usually there's one idiot. There wasn't one idiot.
No.
Everybody on your team, everything about it, sleeping on the bus, your girls. I fell in love with your girls.
Aww.
It was really helpful to me as a mom to talk to the kids, because I leave my son out of my act for the most part because he didn't sign up for it.
Right.
Right. Plus he's 15.
Uh-huh.
That's those ages. Like I said to him, when you're 20, 21, 20, you might be my whole act.
Right.
Okay. Like you're getting a little grace because I'm trying to let you grow into the person you are. But if you grow up to be a butthead, man, you might be the whole act.
Right.
If you turn out like your uncle, it's really, we're on. But it was so great. I just enjoyed every single second of it.
I loved being in the audience and watching and hearing them enjoy you, because you clearly are not Bert's audience's demographic. Maybe a little crossover.
Yeah.
But Bert's like, middle-aged, beer belly dude,
Yeah. But I really sell 51% of my tickets to men. I'm not a chick comic.
That's so funny. My podcast is 50% male.
Yeah.
We're same.
That's because we have the same male energy.
I think so.
I think that guys can buy tickets to my show, bring them home to their girl, and their girl's not going to go like, what are you getting that for her? I don't want her. And girls can do it. And guys are like, yeah, she's not going to male bash. I mean, I talk about my husband, but that's because that's my life. What do you want me to talk about?
Totally.
You know what I mean? Those are dumb things that are happening in my life.
But you're right. There's something for everybody in your act.
I could have had a better career if I think I would have leaned into, come on, ladies. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but if I would have went, okay, one way, or if I'd never, and I'm not sexual.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if I am sexual anymore as a person. I used to be. But I think after you've been married so long, at some point, you're like, but I don't talk about it in my act because I just always felt uncomfortable. Right. I didn't talk about that around my dad or my brothers or whatever the case may be. I didn't do Funny Women of Playboy in the 90s when my breasts sat way higher. And they offered me the money I was making in a year because I didn't want them to feel awkward. And I also... I didn't want to feel awkward around the guys. I didn't want to be a comedian. I wanted to be a comic. I didn't want to be a female comedian. I wanted to be a comic. So none of that made sense. Didn't move the needle for me. I've also made a lot of bad choices in my career. You know what I mean? I'm not bragging. I could have leaned into a few things. I was Italian comic before people were selling out. I should have leaned into that. I was a mother before everybody else. I should have leaned into that. I didn't. I didn't make sense. I didn't get a podcast. I didn't do any of the stuff. Everybody's like, do this, do that. Dumb.
I don't know if that's dumb. It's just authentic to you, right? You just were you to you.
Yeah.
It would be hard. People ask Bert all the time why he takes his shirt off. That boy never wears a shirt. Ever.
Right.
Like in life in general, ever, unless it's literally really cold outside.
Hysterical.
And he and our youngest daughter have sensory issues with clothes. He's always had sensory problems with clothes. Like I could never, will never, and have really never bought him clothing because I can't. The algorithm of what feels good on his body is a mystery to me.
It's ever changing.
It's completely, and I'll think I got it and I don't got it. So I just gave up trying. So when he took his shirt off, I went, oh yeah, totally. He's uncomfortable.
Because it's true to him. Well, for me too, I didn't have my son, what I say, is 15. So it's been half of my career.
Right.
The second half of my career being a mom, we left LA. We went to the small town in Pennsylvania so he could have what was quote unquote a normal life. And I was the pivot. You know what I mean? I was the one catching the flight, going out every week, making sure that we were taken care of, especially now post, the health issues with my husband. So I felt like when I came home, I had to put it down. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be a comic and a ball buster on the road. And when I came home, I'm just a wife and a mom, and let me focus, because also that's also guilt about what you're giving. There's just no way to avoid mom guilt if you're someone who cares. The only people who don't are people who just, they're just, and I admire that. I went to therapy to try to remove guilt out of my life.
Did you really? But guilt is not a bad thing. Shame is a bad thing.
It's right. But I'm Italian, so everything is like, it's a culture of misery, like miserable, right? Like you can never be happy. As soon as something good is happening, you're afraid when something bad going to happen. Like you can never just sit in the now.
Right.
And I've worked hard to sit in the now because so many things pass you by. When we were touring for those days, I would go out, and every time Bert would take his shirt off, I wanted to watch it, not to watch your husband take his shirt off, but to watch the reaction of the people. Like that's rare air. When he would start the machine story, like I would bust into tears the first time I saw the way people reacted to that, because I know what it's like to string 3 jokes together to get 5 minutes, to get 10 minutes, and how things just have went to a level this is unheard of. Right? It was unheard of to have, maybe Dice had people react to the hickory dickory dock stuff and the nursery rhymes, but I've never seen it in my peers.
Right.
And that was so amazing, Yeah. So to sit in that and watch it in the moment was so cool.
It's very humbling.
Yeah.
It's very, it's very like, this sounds maybe hippy dippy, but it's almost spiritual in that this big group of people are connected and they're all moving at the same time,
Yeah, well, it's cult-like, for sure.
It's cult-like?
He could totally run a cult. I think he literally could run a cult. That's the power of laughter.
Yeah, it's true. That's the power of laughter. Now, what would be in a Bert Kreischer cult? Okay. Bud Light.
For sure.
No shirt.
Those cool sandals.
Definitely some flip-flops. What else? Pizza. Although he's not pizza now. He's pretty.
Yeah,
have you seen him?
Oh my gosh.
He looks like he looks amazing.
Yeah, it's too much work for me. God bless him. And I love that he's doing it. But like even the ice baths to me.
Oh, forget it.
Forget it.
Not doing it.
But
just you did it.
I did it because I'll do anything. That's how I became a comic, because I said, I love comedy, and I saw a woman come through, and I was like, I think I could be as funny as her. And my brother's like, yeah, I dare you. And I'm like, okay, for $50, pay me $50 and I'll do it. But yeah, I did it one time to say I did it. I'll never do it again.
Polar plunge.
That was it. Too much.
It stinks.
Yeah. What else would be in his cult?
Polar plunge, for sure.
I think I think that would be the initiation. Like that would be the final thing you do to be in the cult. You would go, you'd take your shirt off. Maybe you'd go the polar plunge and come out and take your shirt off because you'd be renewed.
Maybe. Something like that for sure.
Maybe you guys should do some kind of retreat.
The cult of the machine or the cult of Kreischer.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's pretty funny.
That's pretty funny.
We'll have to noodle on that.
Could you see him I can see the cover of the album too,
right?
And sitting cross-legged with flowers and the Om, and that's awesome.
Oh, Bertie boy. He's never dull, that guy. Never dull. So is that really how you started stand-up? You took a bet?
Yeah, it's true. I was a huge fan. I'm a huge comedy fan. I didn't come from a lot of laughter. Like I said, I come from a people that, well, my mother had cancer a bunch when I was little, and I was with my grandparents who were right from Italy. That's where, even though she was first generation, I grew up with my grandfather and his wife, and it was very difficult until I was about like 10, 12 years old, then I kind of came home. But it was, we didn't laugh. We would laugh at awkward places.
Huh.
We'd laugh at funerals.
Oh, okay.
When the family would get together, maybe they'd be big family reunions. We'd laugh at those things. But we didn't go see comedies. We didn't watch sitcoms. I did because I loved TV. And then I started finding comedy. And I just was fascinated over and over. I consumed it, but never thinking that I could do it.
Right.
It didn't seem like an option. First of all, Hollywood seemed so far away.
Right.
New York City seemed so far away. And then...
But where'd you grow up? Where were
Cleveland.
you? Okay.
Yeah. And then when even though there were women, but there weren't a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There was like Phyllis Diller and Roseanne and Rosie and Paula Poundstone. And I didn't relate to them because I was a young girl and they're talking about like why, or their, husbands and facelifts and exactly where I am now.
Right.
But I just didn't get it. So when I saw a woman, because my parents had moved when I was in college. And when I worked at a comedy club where they lived in Iowa. It was part of a Funny Bone chain. Mm-hmm. And a woman came through because I thought, I'll just get a job for the summer and meet people and wait on tables and make a little money and watch comedy. And a woman came through and she was just an MC. And I'm like, wait, you can make a real living and you don't have to be famous and you can just go and do this. And when I came home and said that, that's what happened. Then I did an open mic sponsored by a radio station. They hired me for the morning show. I did that for 2.5 years while I was becoming the house MC. And then I moved back to Cleveland. The owner of the Improv there let me be the house MC in Cleveland. I met everybody, started going on the road because they also owned all the chains of the Improvs and the Funny Bones. And right away, the year that I quit my job and was a comic full-time, I worked 38 weeks. I didn't make any money, but, I was an MC staying in the condos with all those lunatics.
Wife of the Party is sponsored by BetterHelp. I am a huge fan of therapy. I've been in therapy on and off for years. I'm currently in therapy because who doesn't need therapy if you're married to Bert Kreischer? I mean, you do. So therapy can be whatever you need it to be. Sometimes for me, it's help with my marriage. Sometimes it's help with myself. Sometimes it's help with my kids. Sometimes it's my childhood. It just depends on what you need. And therapy can be any of those things for you. BetterHelp can make therapy accessible to you because it's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and it adjusts to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire and you get matched with a licensed therapist. And if you don't like the therapist, you can change at any time and there's no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/wife today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/wife.
I was an MC staying in the condos with all those lunatics. Yeah.
That's a great story.
The story, I think, the great story that I always would want to tell, that I'd love to do a show, like a real live TV show with, is when I moved to LA and I'm this comic and now I'm a really tough broad at this point because I spend my 20s on the road trying to stay safe, not get murdered at truck stops on I-80 at 3:00 in the morning, taping my doors shut to make sure no one breaks into my room in the condos and everything. And I had stayed with the, I don't want to say the word because it'll mess up your algorithm or whatever, but this guy who victimized, can I say?
Yeah, say whatever you want.
The serial rapist, Vince Champ, he was like the winner of Star Search, and I had to share a condo with him one night, the night that he raped a girl.
What?
Yeah, it's the onus of the podcast that I started because this is 1996, he's the winner of Star Search, $200,000 he wins, which is a ton of money back then.
Yeah.
He's the NACA champion, #1 comic. And I'm in the condo on a Monday because you would stay, again, Tuesday through Sunday shows. You didn't have time to go home. You'd stay in a condo or you'd go to the condo in advance.
Right.
I'm in Omaha because I'm going to Des Moines. He comes through. No one tells you. They're flop houses for comics.
Totally.
For people who don't get it. He's like, hey, I'm Vince. I'd never met him before. I was like, hi. I go, I'm going to the gym. He said, I got a college tonight. Doesn't say anything else. Actually doesn't treat me, kind of disregards me, but I'd been disregarded a lot by a lot of, there weren't a lot of women. So it's not like anyway, it doesn't matter because I go to the gym. I come back, I see him. He's going to the show or his show. I go to movies. I never see him again. I come home, I go to bed, I leave the next day. But about a month and a half later, I'm at a show in Kansas City and the owner comes to me and says, there's law enforcement here to speak to you. And I think it's a joke. And they're there to talk to me about Vince. They take me down to their offices and then they just hit me like, your boyfriend is a rapist.
Boyfriend?
Well, I did date a guy back in Cleveland who was a complete asshole. I thought he was cheating on me. Turns out, but I didn't no, also too, LeeAnn, I'm 27, so I'm not savvy. And I start crying. I'm like, I thought he was cheating on me, but I didn't know he was a rapist. They're talking about Vince, not my boyfriend,
oh
right?
My
so
God.
It's a little confusing right there. Then they think because I'm in a city with him that he's my boyfriend. They don't understand how the condo situation works. They don't understand that women are going around. Like they just didn't get it.
Yeah.
And so we got it straightened out and I was able to help them actually shed a little bit of light. I don't think I was that helpful, but they understood why they couldn't track him. And the night that he had stayed with me, he had raped a woman. And
in the condo?
No,
okay.
At the college campus.
Jesus.
But apparently came back and stayed at the condo. I slept right next. I'm like, then for the next probably till about 3 years ago, I carried all of this guilt because that woman saved my life, really. I felt like if he would have came back with all that rapey energy, probably would have killed me, right? Like, I don't think I would have been able to recognize him. And I got to talk to her.
Oh, wow.
Because she put her name out in a paper talking about how she's a survivor. She relieved me of that guilt. But yeah. So anyway, I became super, super tough. And when I got here in LA, I moved into a stripper colony. Like there was.
What is a stripper colony?
Well, there's like 8 apartments, me and this attorney. And then the other 6 apartments are occupied by strippers in different stages of their careers, stripping. Right? Like there's
that's a sitcom.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But not only that, I mean, they taught me how to be feminine. Because on Mondays, like I would have never back at home, we'd have probably not been friends or circles wouldn't have crossed. But on Mondays, I had off. Strippers have Mondays off too. Strippers and comics, right?
Yeah.
So as long as I was paying for dinner, I had friends to hang out with on that day. And there was like the one that was the older lady. Now she's probably younger than me at this point, but she looked like Magda from Something About Mary. She was always naked, tits out to get the mail. People who you don't want to see naked. You know how that works?
Yeah.
Like
I do.
Then there was the one who was like spectacularly gorgeous. I mean, like a Pamela Anderson lookalike, but she hoarded animals.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Like turtles, freeform birds are flying around, rabbits that would just crap all over everything. Like it was just insane.
Yeah.
The one who would had the double G's and would go pick up because they all worked up at like Crazy Horse, and she would drive her real old electric car that looked like bullpen cars that you and Bert almost fell off of.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Yeah, and she would stop and pick up garbage on the way. So those girls softened me up a little bit. They taught me how to, they taught me that how to, I would always be like, hey, how you doing? If there was a guy in my life where I was just really straight shooter. And they were like, you need to have a little mystique, a little bit. You know what I mean? Don't call them back. Because guys always want the stripper that doesn't pay attention to them.
Right.
So it was interesting. It was really, and that I literally, the next guy I dated post those girls was my husband, who I couldn't get to leave.
You couldn't get rid of him?
I tried to shake him as much as I possibly could. And that poor guy followed me around.
Oh, it's not a poor guy. He hit the jackpot.
Well.
How'd you meet him?
Through the stripper.
No way.
For real. His best friend was dating the one. There was a girl. the very first time I meet her, I'm moving in and I'm like carrying my boxes like some moving truck company because I can't afford one. So I'm doing it all myself.
Yep.
And she's ignoring me. And I'm like in my head, I'm going, they can't even open the door from
Yeah.
keep walking past. She's got this bag. I see her get dropped off and she's got this bag. Beautiful girl. Of course, you notice it. And all of a sudden this guy comes up and he's like, I've been calling you. And she brings her suitcase into my apartment. She goes, I've been helping her move. And she goes, hey, do you mind if I go with him? I'll be right back. I go, yeah, sure. Go do what you got to do.
Thanks for not helping me all day.
I don't even know you.
Right?
I don't even know. And literally she knocks on my door a couple hours later and she goes, hey, you got my bag? And I go, yeah. And she introduced herself. She opens up her bag in front of me and it's got all this cash. She'd just come back from seeing some sultan somewhere. Anyway, my husband's roommate used to date her. They started hanging out again. She's on the phone with him. It's a Monday. She's like, hey, what are you and Luca doing tonight? And I go, is that Luca Polanca from the Comedy Store? And she's like, yeah, how do you know him? And I go, I really don't. I just know of his name. We used to work Night of 1,000 Guidos that Mitzi used to have us do.
Oh my God.
But I would go on earlier and he would go on later. And that was it. We hung out. If I'd have met him at the store, I would have never dated him because I just didn't want to date a comic.
Right.
But because I met him separately.
Right.
And because he was in the middle of acting and directing and stuff, then I think it felt right.
That's your husband?
Yeah, that's my husband.
I didn't know he was an actor.
Yeah,
Director?
He was directing. And I mean, he's paid, like the other night, I was at the store and I took a picture of my name and his name and sent him to my son. And I go, kid, you know how rare this is for a kid to have both their parents on the store? Like it's, I mean,
are you the only couple with both parents?
No, Rich Voss and Bonnie McFarlane.
Oh, yeah. Totally rich.
I think Jerry Stiller and Ann Mira might be.
Of course.
And of course, Paulie. Of course, Mitzi's name and Sammy are up there.
Right.
But I don't know. Is there anybody else that has?
I don't think so.
Because I don't think Tom Cotter and Carrie Louise, but I don't think they're on there.
Tom Segura, Christina P.
Oh, of course,
maybe.
Them. How can I miss them?
Yeah, maybe them.
Of course, them.
Yeah.
Not maybe. Of course, them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
her and her great lipstick.
Cool. I know. That lipstick's pretty fabulous, isn't it?
I ordered it.
You did?
Yeah, I can't wear red, but just to support it. You know what I mean?
I didn't think I could wear red. But we were in Austin and I was like, I keep meaning to buy her lipstick and I keep forgetting. And they just gave me a tube. I put it on and I was like, hey, I could actually pull this off with the right outfit.
Yeah, you can.
I could pull it off.
Yeah.
I think red would look great on you, no?
I end up looking like one of those 1930s movie stars. You know what I mean? Like the Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. It ends up all the way around here. Like I might as well just put it on like the crazy person thing.
Like a crayon?
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Yeah, I end up looking like one of those whack jobs.
So when did you move out of LA?
2007, I got pregnant. My agent told me I was never going to work again.
Why?
Because I wrote a joke about it, so I don't want to tell you the jokey joke because I don't want to do jokes on it. But he literally said to me, I've never seen a pregnant woman on stage because at that point, there really hadn't been monologists. And I really didn't have anybody to talk to because all those people that I talked to, look, we come from a business at a time where a lot of my peers, female peers, had wives and their wives had their babies for them. So they weren't doing it.
Right.
And, when you talk about Joan, of course, or you talk about Roseanne, or you talk about, they were rich.
Right.
I have jokes. I didn't have that kind of money. I have go get on a plane, go get to a club, sell some tickets and make a decent living and come home money. So he just kept telling me I couldn't do it. And he was like, I just don't think we're going to be able, you got to hide it. And there was one club, I'll never forget, that I showed up 5 months pregnant. And he said, oh, I didn't know you were pregnant. And I said, what? He goes, yeah, I wish they would have told me you were pregnant. And Ralphie May had been there the week before. And I love Ralphie, God rest his soul, you know. But I said, he's still 100 pounds heavier than me.
Right.
What's the difference?
Right.
What what does it matter what I weigh? But like, and he goes, I just wish they would have told me. I go, it doesn't complicate you. It's not your baby. You don't have to worry about it.
It doesn't affect your funny at all. And isn't that what people are paying for? Is the funny?
Yeah. I just look like I'm chubby. That's it.
And even that, well, it's because you admit that you'd had sex.
Yeah. That's probably what it was.
It is. She's having sex.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Well,
So
I used to also like to go on towards the end when I was huge. I really couldn't stop because I was nervous. You know, you want to spend time at home with your baby.
Right.
I thought I was going to have 3 weeks off and then go to Le Mans and do all that stuff. But I was literally in labor. I didn't know at Governor's in Long Island.
No way.
Yeah, because my back was killing me. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I finally had to sit down. I've never sat down on a stool and I sat down and was telling it. My back was hurting and my son was born the next day.
Wow.
Great timing, right? That kid's spectacular.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was fun. But that's when we left because I just knew that I didn't have a support system here and I wasn't going to be home.
Right.
And if I could have had any other job that allowed me, if I'd been on a TV show or if any podcast stuff had been in the zeitgeist at that point, maybe I would have had other options, but I just didn't.
So what was the plan and where did you go?
First, we went to Brooklyn.
Okay.
And we were one attached house away from my mother-in-law.
Okay.
Who now we have a great relationship. But at the time, it was her. I went to work one day when he was a month and a half old. I did a corporate. I came back within 12 hours. All of my stuff was on the porch from my living room.
What?
Because she got new furniture, and unbeknownst to me, and decided that mine was junky because I had shabby chic, right?
Oh.
And she threw all mine out. And I literally am like chasing my furniture down, trying to get it. I try to explain it to Luca because I'm also a grown woman. I'm not a 22-year-old girl. This time I'm 38. I know what I like. And, I subsequently found out that my mother and my mother-in-law both got married. My mother-in-law at 17, my mother at 18. I have to treat them like a 17 and 18-year-old girl because women in general, in my observation, I'm no sociologist, but I watch people for a living. Unless or until they make a decision to elevate themselves, they tend to stop growing at the age they got married. Mm-hmm. They're frozen in that spot. So when I began to treat them like teenage girls, my relationship got better with both of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating observation because I think that happens for men as well.
Really?
I do. I was just talking about this exact thing with somebody about a couple of back home friends.
Okay.
That you don't see or talk to much. And when you see or talk to them, you go, wow, you really haven't changed since we were like 18. Because you married the girl you went to high school with.
Yes.
At 18. And you are still functioning with other people outside of your marriage the same way you function within your marriage, which is like you're 18.
Yeah. And especially if you stay in those dynamics too. You know what I mean? Especially because then they encourage all that. I don't know how anybody gets married so young and can stay together, what they have to put each other through. I'm sure there's the rare thing. I'm sure people are going to go, I got married, we have a beautiful marriage, and God bless you, but you are the exception. You are not the rule.
No, I agree. Or you're just living in denial or misery or both.
That's probably both.
I mean, it's a miracle, I think, to learn and grow and progress at a same or similar speed starting at 18. You don't even know who you are at 18.
Yeah.
I mean, for your mother-in-law and your mother's generation, I think it was a little different. It was a little easier, but not a lot than it is today. I mean, I look at I know what I was doing at my daughter's age. And,
yeah, for sure.
And I'm like, oh, no. They're definitely like 4 or 5 years behind me in their development and their lack of inhibition, lack of fear, lack of judgment. We would just do anything. Maybe it was not great on our part to be that free, and they're much more cautious
They're not as social, LeeAnn.
They're not.
I don't mean your girls. I mean
In
the
general.
general. Because I mean,
No.
I'll say to my, like, I'll be out of town and I'll call my son and it'll be Friday night. I'll be like, what are you doing? And he's like, no, I'm just going to be here. And I'm like, do you remember a Friday night in your teenage years that you were home?
Wouldn't have happened.
No.
Never home.
No. And their social, though, can be upstairs in their room. I do get that.
Yeah.
That they can talk and they can play video games and they could do whatever they want. But I guess when we were home, you were just home.
Well, I had my own phone line. So I was on the phone.
I was just talking about that this morning with my friend. And I'm like, how? It was so cool. The people who had their own line. That is insane.
I did. I asked for it for like Christmas. Please, can I have my own phone line? I got it in 8th grade.
Oh, God.
And
you were a baller, LeeAnn.
I was like, yes, I had my own phone line. And I think my kids are like, that's the dumbest thing ever. And I'm like, imagine getting, everyone else has a cell phone, a smartphone, except you. So it was the same thing as getting a smartphone in that generation, right?
Yeah.
You had direct access to your people.
Wait, did you have in the phone book, which you might have to put like a disclaimer and explain what a phone book is to people.
Right.
Was it like your parents' number and then it said child's line underneath?
I don't remember.
Did you have your own?
I don't remember.
Wow.
I don't remember. No
That
idea.
is so cool. See, what we were talking about is that I'm trying to figure out what to get involved in for my kid and what not to. Like, there's no way I could have had a phone back in the day. My mother would have she went through everything. If I had somebody else's socks, she'd be like, whose socks are these? Right. And I'm trying to give him, also I'm raising a young boy to be a man.
Right.
So I have to give him his manhood at some point. So you got to kind of navigate that, right?
Yeah.
You want to give them their own confidence. But I didn't even get to have phone calls without someone being on the other line. My mother would be listening. What do you mean no one's going to be home for that party? Or my brothers would be listening to try to tell on me or so. You know what I mean? There's always something going on. So to have your own line, that was a separate level of privacy.
Well, it was privacy and it was freedom, and it was probably not all healthy.
Also, your mother, they were divorced. So your mother didn't want to talk to your father back then probably either.
No.
So, okay.
No.
Yeah.
But I wasn't calling my dad on that phone line for sure. I was calling all my friends and you know, I was getting into all kinds of drama on that thing. And I don't know, it's freedom in kids. I'm still kind of blown away by the fact that your mother-in-law put your furniture on the porch. So I kind of want to go back to that. But
yeah.
But having teenagers is an interesting moment right now, I think, in that the teenagers are different than any other teenagers in the past. And I think you could say that about, you know, I'm a Gen X.
Yeah.
We're Gen Xers, and we were the first latchkey kids. We were the first kids that had divorced parents. We were the first kids that had this like kind of untethered independence as a generation. Go outside, play in the street, come home when the street lamps come back on. I know as a generation, a lot of people had that as their experience, just kind of this untethered freedom.
Because no one seemed to care about, they cared about our health.
Yes.
And our safety.
Yes.
But not our opinion.
100%. Not your opinion. And you did what you were told because you were told it.
That's right.
Right? You come in when the streetlights come on, and I don't give a crap what else is going on. That's when you come in and you just did it. Because the consequences were, you know, I got spanked.
Even at school, they would spank you.
Oh, I got paddled at school.
For sure.
Yeah. So, and I know that corporal punishment or whatever that's called is not the way, perhaps, but it did actually do something positive in that we learned how to kind of do what we were told for the greater good sometimes.
Well, I think it made you presentable for public. Does that make sense? Right?
Yeah, maybe so.
It made you presentable for public.
Yes.
There were certain rules of society that were acceptable and normal. Like if a kid was at a restaurant, they weren't running around.
No, true.
How many times have you been at a restaurant now where the kid is running around? Like you don't want them to run into the corner of the table, but their parents don't seem to care that they're going to gouge their eye out.
Yeah.
parents don't seem to care that they're going to hit the table and the candle wax is going to fall on them.
Right.
But you're sitting there going, oh my God, this kid is running around. Now I love kids and I understand that. But you know what? Our parents, if you went, you sat in your chair.
Yep.
Or they just didn't go until you were presentable for public.
Well, that's the way we ran our kids. Our kids, we didn't have iPads for our kids when they were little. And I have so many conversations about me saying, I'll stay home with the kids, you go to dinner, or vice versa. But we can't all go together because Isla, it literally is a lunatic. I mean, Bert just sent me a picture of Isla in elementary school, and where there was a period of time where she just liked to wear her lunchbox on her head, you know? And so that's cool at school.
Your little mini me.
But you can't take that to a restaurant.
No.
Right? School's okay. And we were like totally fine. But that she would have done that in a restaurant. So then you go, well, then we're just not going to that restaurant.
And there's no point. And also, I spent so much time cleaning up at the restaurant.
Yeah, me too.
Right? It wasn't fun for me.
No,
it wasn't fun for me anymore.
No.
I'm over here basically going, can I have the vacuum?
Exactly.
I don't want to work here now. I got to do side work. I couldn't, it was never, I would much rather stay at home and order in or whatever it was. My husband's a great cook. So that's, that was our dynamic. But, it's just a different time.
It's different. And it's odd. I don't know what my point was in starting that conversation.
I think we were just talking about how our mothers are getting married and kids and all that stuff.
Yes, but having my own phone line and the independence of the kids these days. And I don't know. Teenagers are really, they're head scratchers to me, I have to tell you. I was motivated, so highly motivated to do things that I find this generation has no motivation for at all.
Okay, this is my theory.
Okay.
When I was 19 years old, I had Lucy, I have your socks on from the New Hampshire gig.
That's awesome.
They're my good luck socks. I had a friend that died in a car crash. Devastated me.
Yeah.
Okay. Because death became real. Even though I'd seen aunts, uncles, grandparents die, I'd never seen someone my age die. Okay. That was my first ever little bout of depression that it was unjustified depression. Okay?
Yeah.
I think these kids in the past few years, all we talked about was death. We see all this stuff. These kids are not isolated. I'm not trying to be silly, but we didn't see the news.
No,
it was on at 6 and 11.
Mm-hmm.
You were either out playing or in bed.
Yeah.
You didn't watch it. They're inundated with the news. You can't get away from it. They've seen these realities, and they shouldn't. There was a certain thing children should be seen and not heard was also for our benefit a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It kept us kids.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
And I think they're struck. Of course they're depressed. I'd be depressed too if at 14, 15 years old, I heard about the whole world has a shutdown. Sit in the house because you're afraid because you could go out and die.
Yeah.
That's insane.
True. It is insane. Now, I didn't, I made the 2 and 2 together of why kids these days are anxious and depressed from COVID and from that. But I didn't really relate it to us not seeing the news. You're right. I never watched the news.
Never. I hated 60 Minutes on Sunday. Sunday night, 60 Minutes would come on, that little tick, 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 tick.
Yeah.
Because I hated it because first of all, to me, it was boring.
Yeah.
And second of all, it meant weekend was over and you had to go back to school the next day.
I didn't like it for that reason too.
Yeah. It was a timer
the weekend's over.
for school.
Yeah.
Even though I liked school because that was my social life. But at some point, you just didn't want to go.
No, you love the weekend.
Yeah.
You're working for the weekend.
Yeah.
And weekend's over. I had that same reaction to 60 Minutes.
Isn't that funny?
Oh, man, here we go. Weekend's over. Wow, your mother-in-law put your... why did she think that she could do that? And especially, like you said, you were not a kid.
Yeah, she thought she was helping me. The worst part wasn't that she didn't get it. Well, the other part is, this is very chicky, but my son comes out. I have to pump because I'm leaving, right? I try to breastfeed him, and she has formula in a bottle. So that was a whole other thing. She just thought she was doing something nice for me.
Yeah.
Now that I know her,
Mm-hmm.
I know that she really thought she was doing something nice for me.
Right.
Of course, I'm a month and a half out of having a baby. I'm a little bit, I'm also nesting for the first time. I'm not a good, I just never saw that for myself either. I never wanted to grow up and get married and have a baby. I raised my brothers. I felt like I didn't want, but my husband did not see anything wrong with it.
Mm.
And that's what I was like, okay. And I had a little house in Pennsylvania. It was a town that was an hour and a half from where I grew up. I had relatives that lived there. They had a amusement park. And I was like, when I got a little money from stand-up, I said, I'm going to get this house and that's going to be the home place where we all meet, no matter where we are in the family, in the country. This will be where we have the holidays. So I said to Luke, I'm going to the house in Pennsylvania. And when you want to grow up and you could come live with us. And if you don't, and he had to be a man a little bit. So it took him a couple of days to come, but then he showed up. And then my parents moved there to help us because we got the TV show. And then that ended, but both my brothers were there. And now my father's gone. My one brother's gone. The other one, I wish he would move somewhere. No, I love him. But, and it turned out to be a great place to raise my son.
Yeah.
It's
in Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Pennsylvania's beautiful.
It's just a little 14,000 person town. It's not as convenient. I'm an hour and a half from an airport. If I was going to do it again, I would have put all that stuff in the factor. I spend 12-hour days going to and from work because my airline doesn't fly direct, but they're going to have to do without me next year if they don't, because of the strike and because of all kinds of stuff. I didn't qualify this year for my tier. So if I don't get it, forget it. I'm going teeny weeny airlines. It's just, I'll have to put up with the party people.
There you go.
That's
so cool that you did that though, that you moved back, that you raised your kid, not in Hollywood, not in LA. I think can be very challenging to raise a kid here sometimes.
I think, it's a, you can look at it from whatever side of the coin you want to. I could have probably had a better career because I would have had more opportunities that would provided financially better for us if I would have stayed here when everybody was starting all their side businesses and all this stuff. Maybe I would have been able, because I was friends with everybody. I'd have been on this or that, and it would have made me sell more tickets and we could have provided more. However, I also don't know that, I don't know what would have happened with our relationship. He wouldn't have had his family. He wouldn't have known my father. He wouldn't have known, the freedom in a small town is easier over there. So I think it's, maybe my career would have been better, but maybe it wouldn't have. Maybe I wouldn't have really enjoyed the time with him. So, and it is what it is now. He's got 3 more years. He graduates from high school. You know what it's like. I told everybody, hey, in 3 to 4 years, we're out of this small town. If I got to work until I forget my act, I'm going to be somewhere. I don't think we'll come back here, but I think we'll go probably a little closer to New York or somewhere where I can drive an hour and a half to gigs.
Yeah.
And then come home and sleep in my own bed.
That'd be great.
That's all I want. That's my own commodity.
What did Luca do when he moved? What does he do? What did he do for a living when you moved?
Well, so then he was still trying to edit his film that ultimately got in a weird contract over song rights because they did this parody of this George Michael thing. And George Michael had given him the rights to the soundtrack in so many of his songs, but then he died, and then it blew the budget out of the movie because his estate wouldn't allow them to have it. So that movie just had to be put down, and there was no way to substitute it because it was about these 2 mobster guys who were fascinated with Wham. Right? It was called Made in Brooklyn, so it was so cool. But so then he started buying properties, but the problem is in a small town, properties are cheap because he'd only lived in New York and LA. Properties are cheap because that's what they stay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he went around like Monopoly, and I'm like, no. So got us into a little bit of financial stuff, and he got rid of it. And now we have a mechanic's garage. That's all we have left. That's why I always said, if you want to park the bus, I'm in Midway in Pennsylvania. You park the bus over at our garage.
We've actually talked about doing that in between when he has runs that are all East Coast, but he's going to come back here instead of driving the bus all the way back here.
I'm 40 minutes. Remember when you guys stopped in Erie? It was the only time. I'm 40 minutes from Erie. The bus stopped in Erie for 2 days, but I had to go somewhere else. And but you should just come park the bus. I won't let anybody in it. I might go sleep in it to just get away from everybody. Every once in a while, I'll call you like, LeeAnn, I'm going to be on the bus. But yeah, just leave it there.
Okay, we may
room.
do that. I'll remind him. We were talking about that not long ago. He was talking about leaving it in Nashville. And I was like, well, Tammy has a garage. So maybe we just leave it with Tammy. And then it ended up something changed with his routing. And something happened with that.
But always, no one will bother it.
Oh, well, thank you. That's great.
Yeah, I'll make sure no one knows too. But the thing is there's always the anonymity in a small town that's lovely, but they also know all your business. See, in LA, you barely even know your neighbors' names unless you want to and you live in that same community, you know?
Yeah, it's true.
So
who did you grow up admiring or watching as a comic? Who were your favorite comics when you were?
Eddie Murphy. I loved Eddie Murphy.
Yeah,
I mean, I took I bought a tape, right? I snuck in. We were after church at a Kmart, and here we are, like we're checking out. And what I said is to my mother, I'm like, oh, I have to go to the bathroom, right? I'm probably 8th grade, and I had my little $12. So she went out to the car, and I went and snuck and got this. It was Delirious, right? Which you weren't even supposed to buy, but I had a friend who had an older brother that was the cashier. So I went through his line, paid for the tape, and snuck it home. I was not a bad kid, but that was something, for some reason, I was fascinated with Delirious. And I would sneak in my closet with an old cassette player with a sleeping bag over and just listen to it like this. And I loved him. Weirdly enough.
How did you know about him? Did you watch Saturday Night Live, or how did you even know to go buy
Yes, I
that
did watch
tape?
Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
I did. And then I had a babysitter that liked comedy.
Got it.
And it would, I could see, like, my grandparents did watch the Jeffersons or All in the Family, funny sitcoms. That's where I think I learned how to laugh at Sanford and Son and things like that. I mean, when I first heard Red Fox as a stand-up, I had mind-blowing, just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So I became like a real consumer of comedy. I know it is what it is, but I know Bill Cosby himself verbatim, because that was HBO came out and that played 70,000 times on HBO, and we would watch it. And I was allowed to have people over to watch it because he was clean. You know what I mean? Yeah, I just loved that kind of, I loved Rodney. One of the best gifts I would have ever been given was from Dom Irera, who was a friend and a mentor. And we were doing a spot one night at the Comedy Store, and I went back over to the Valley when I lived on this side of the hill, single by then, that's back then. And Dom calls me. And his fiance at the time was one of my best friends. That's the comics in my life. That's why I'm excited to have you in my life, because have given me some of the best women I know.
Wow.
Because it takes a very strong woman to be with some of these guys. There's some that are different. I'm not going to, we know what we get out of some of the other wives. But the ones who have strong women have always been my friends. And I love it because I love a strong woman. He goes, come back over. I said, no, Dom, it takes a half hour to get, I'm not coming. I'm already back at the house. He goes, come back over. I got a set at the Laugh Factory. I want you to see it. And I go, man. Sure enough, he cons me into it. He goes, just get over here. It's Rodney on stage.
Oh, wow.
Rodney in his robe with an earpiece in his ear. His wife is telling him his jokes in case he forgets where he was. But he actually really did well. Then afterwards, we sit at Greenblatt's Deli, and I sit at the feet of the master, literally, and I hear all the stories.
Wow.
Till like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. And it was one of the best nights of my life.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell anybody from back home because they would have never believed it. These moments happen in our lives that are so beyond your wildest dreams, right? when Arsenio sends me a tweet and says, Eddie and I watched your special and it was brilliant, you just go,
what?
I'm dead. Like,
Yeah.
how does that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. You just don't believe it. So, yeah, those are the fun things about this.
The world of comedy, too, my perspective in the world of comedy, and it is very narrow because I am a sidecar. I'm not the motorcycle. I'm a sidecar.
That's interesting
right?
the way you put it that way.
But I'm still in the race, right? I'm just in the sidecar.
Yeah, I think you might have originally been, but I think you're still, maybe you're not standing on stage, but you're in it more than a lot of people who are actually standing on stage are.
Well, that may be true for the business part of it, for sure. But my feeling about the world of comedy is that it is, I know everybody says it's a family, and that sounds so cliche, but it actually is, because it's really kind of a small group of people. When we went to the 60th anniversary of the Improv, and I knew so many people there from comedy from eras ago to now.
Yes.
That you go, I couldn't believe I knew as many people as I knew. And then when you think about the broader scope of comedy, obviously I'm not as close to or don't know as well New York comics because I was never in that scene. I was only in the LA scene with Bert. But it's really not that big.
No, and that's why it's very important, like, because you see everybody, and imagine before. Like now there's a lot of comics that I don't know. The Improv was the first place. I was 18 years old. I had a friend who had a boyfriend who was playing in a band, and they lived in Reseda, he and his band. She's like, do you want to come to LA with me? We flew out to LA. I didn't even have like a real ID. I had a fake ID. They got me a fake ID. But they were like, where do you want to go? And I go, I want to go to the Improv. So I go to the Improv, and sure enough, there's Bud, because I'd seen Evening at the Improv. Now, I'm not a comic. I don't think I'm going to be a comic. It never even, but
this is before your brothers dared you.
Yeah, my brothers didn't dare me till I was 22 years old.
Oh, wow.
I just loved comedy. There's Bud on stage bringing up comics. The bathroom there's two little stalls and they're overrun. There's stuff and it smells like sewage. But I'm like, wow, this is the coolest place I've ever been. And yet those are things that it was a small community. Now there are comics I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think comedy right now is having like a huge surge. It's huge right now, comedy in the world. I think this is a moment. We've been in a moment for a little bit here. And I think there are more comics now than there were in the past. But
for sure.
But yeah, I don't know. This world of comics, to me, my experience of being in the world is that they're some of the most compassionate, kind people are in that group. There are obviously some that are not, that are self-involved and self-centered and assholes.
Yeah.
Of course. But my experience has been that there's people that listen, that remember what you talked about, that are paying attention, that keep up with you,
Yeah, I like that.
And I don't feel like people are keeping up with me because of Fully Loaded, of the festival. And she could give me a job. Not like that. They're keeping up with me because we had a real connection.
Well, I think there are those people that are just nice when you're hot. I had a tough time, and I remember all the incoming phone calls of that week. Those phone calls mean a lot to you, but the people who are only around for the good times will show themselves to you. That's the one thing about, and I kind of love it when they do, when they show, you see who they are, because then you can separate it. I did have to remember that it is work.
Right.
But everybody goes through that.
Yeah.
There are people who are sitting in cubicles and they have to remember that that's just a work colleague. Right.
Yeah.
So I think comedy tricks you sometimes because you think that you really are a family, because it doesn't have the confines of a brick and mortar.
Yeah, I can see that with Bert. Yeah, Bert sometimes gets in there and does exactly what you're talking about, and do some business with somebody and thinks there's a relationship there that's maybe not quite what he thinks it is.
Right.
As to Bert, everybody is
His friend.
His friend.
Because he
Everybody.
comes from a pure place.
He does.
Not everybody does.
Yeah.
But not everybody does anywhere.
Right.
Is this so Charlie could tell you what your next mission is?
Yeah. That's Halston's box.
It sure is.
This
I
is
almost choked.
Charlie's
Sorry.
Angels.
That's
This
what
is-
I wanted.
This is so funny.
That's what I
this is-
wanted.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe it. I caught it out of the corner of my eye and I was like, I loved Charlie's Angels.
Me too.
This is insane.
Isn't it great? So he's in the room down the hall, and sometimes he needs to talk to me, like pull your mic closer or tell me something that, like when I'm doing ad reads, I have to correct. And I was like, we were trying to figure out how we could communicate without him walking all the way down the hallway. And I was like, you know what I want is a Charlie's Angels box and have you talk to me.
Dead.
So Christian in there found this is the same exact.
It's exactly.
It's
That's
the
how I
same.
know. This is
Yes.
exactly. Like I would really like you to say, girls, I have a mission.
Girls, I have a mission.
Oh, I'm done. That's so cool. That's so cool.
Isn't that cool? I
That
love
is
it.
So cool.
It's for the Gen Xers, you know, the Gen Y or whatever. I keep saying Gen Y, and my daughter told me there's no such thing.
Why would we just skip it over?
They're millennials. We go X, millennial, Z.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
I like the Z more than I like some of the millennial because
well,
I think
the man on the box is a millennial.
okay, then I like millennials too. I don't know. I think it's a very different. You know, one thing I will say is I like the age that I am, but I don't like how everybody, the only thing that's left is ageism.
Uh-huh.
Because like people go, you're old, you look like this, you da. And I want to go, I'm catching up with, like, I will write your name down and I will come and find you in 20 years.
Right.
And I'm going to look at you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go, you remember when you said this? How do you feel about this right now?
Yeah, right.
Take a picture of you.
Aging as a woman is a very interesting moment, right? I feel I've always been cute as a bug, right? Really cute, really skinny, no effort, no makeup.
Mm-hmm.
And you get seen that way, right? When I've gotten into middle age, it is amazing how I am not seen, or I am seen in a way that doesn't represent who I am. Just assumed on what I look like. Now, I took
that's
for
brilliant.
granted that I was a cutie pie, right? I really took it for granted. And I think about how
And
do
you still are. Just so you know. I know, but I know what, but I'm hearing,
you know what I
want to hear
mean?
what you're saying. Yes.
In my world, I'm for 53,
yeah, you look
I'm killing it.
phenomenal.
Totally.
But I want you to finish that thread because I understand, because it really feels like we're hidden. We're invisible.
Completely. So when I walk into an airport to get help at a counter, the person at the airport counter treats me very differently than 10 years ago,
Mhm.
than 20 years ago. That's what I'm talking about. When
Yeah.
I check out at Target, I see the look is different
Mhm.
than it was before. They're expecting me to be a Karen.
For sure.
When-
That's the whole thing. You can't even say a little something. Like we're allowed to all be a little dissatisfied with something, right? Also, because you're a strong woman and maybe you voice it I'm loud, okay? I'm loud. I used to get in trouble in school because I don't know how to whisper. I'm always the one that you probably had to shush me on the tour. I probably, I don't mean to be loud. So if I'm dissatisfied with something, I can't even, I just don't. My son was like, Mom, why don't you tell him that your steak isn't done the way you like? I go, because I'm just not gonna, I just can't. I can't. I don't want to deal with the ramifications of someone going, oh, she's so hard to please. Look at that lady over there. You're going to be a Karen.
Yes. I have the problem. Here's the problem that I have. I shifted from younger, cuter, not middle-aged LeeAnn. I have always been extremely direct.
Mm-hmm.
What you see is what you get. I don't have any need to blow smoke up anybody's ass. But I don't think I'm an asshole. I'm just very direct. I'm just like, well, I'm not happy with that. So let's do this or that. I
But
try
you
to
also
be nice
give
about
compliments when good things
it.
happen.
Completely.
Right.
But now that I'm here and at this age, I find what happens is I have people telling me a lot that my directness is aggressive. Where I go, but I'm saying the same thing in the same way I said it 10 years ago. So the only thing that's different is that I got a little saggy jowl. I'm clearly 50 something years old. And maybe society has changed with Karen, and Karen's a little different now. There was no such thing as a Karen 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of it, and it's not me. But yeah, it is fascinating to walk into a room. I used to walk into a room and feel like I belonged. And now sometimes I walk into the room and have to earn the belong.
That happens to me even. Do you know how many times I show up to a club that I'm working? That it's me. I'm the headliner. And they'll go, you have a ticket? You have your seat? They don't even know. I just look like an old lady walking up to see the show. There's a million times that literally you just, what I think it's the perception. Like I'll try to say something and somebody told me like, that's passive aggressive. I go, no. I'm not passive over anything. It's not passive aggressive. What would be aggressive is if I got angry.
Right.
Because I suffer a series of small indignities. Like I'm literally writing a book called Death by Paper Cuts. Okay.
Are you really?
Yeah, because I can't. There's small little things that consistently happen. And I think that our generation has to learn. We could speak to people directly.
Mm-hmm.
You really didn't hurt our feelings because our parents spoke to us directly.
Yeah.
Even my mother finds it hard sometimes to talk to her grandchildren because she'll be like, oh, no, you didn't. And they'll go like, May doesn't like me. No, she's just it's
direct.
Yeah, they just talk to you that way. It has nothing to do with it. So I think that their perception of what we're saying, because they're sensitive, you have to not be able to be who you are, which isn't fair.
Right.
It's not fair that we can't be us. It doesn't mean that I'm aggressive. It means that I don't have a lot of time to mess with this.
Right.
And the stuff that I put up with, that you put up with as a woman, sometimes being the only woman in the room, would cripple you.
Yeah, right.
Would cripple a certain generation right now.
It does concern me. That actually concerns me because I think, well, what's the end game look like? Like that's, not everybody needs to be tough as nails. Not everybody's supposed to be tough as nails. But what does that resiliency look like then? Because maybe, I think about it too, maybe what we see as resiliency is not, like, what is their resiliency? Maybe it's something we're not seeing, like their sensitivity or their want or need for everyone to feel accepted or everyone to get a trophy or whatever. Is there some resiliency in that I'm missing? Because I never have ever thought I knew everything.
No, of course not.
So there's
asinine.
What part am I missing? Like, is there some way that I'm looking at this incorrectly? About the way not just other generations, but the way other people handle life,
Well, yeah, that's going to remain a mystery. It's going to be really hard because by the time we figure it out,
we'll be dead.
No, and no one's going to be helping us. We're all going to be living in the tour bus.
Right.
But the fact is that I really think, LeeAnn, like, I've always been under the guise that if your house is on fire, you got to get outside.
Yeah.
Even if you got to run through the flames and get burned.
Yeah.
You might get burned and you might have burns, but you got to get outside.
Yeah.
You got to get through the pain. You can't stop inside the pain.
No,
right?
Yeah.
And that's what I keep trying to get through to my kid. That's my only message. So I think that there's always going to be a few kids of every generation. This sounds like I'm talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But there's going to be a few kids who get that. And they're going to be able to help the other. Your girls are tough girls. Whatever you see more than I see clearly. I'm only giving you a perspective of the 5 days that I spent with them.
Mm-hmm.
But those girls, you've given them the skills to navigate their life. We all fall into things. You probably had things in your life before Bert. I had bad situations clearly in my life, but somehow I had the skills to navigate it. Hopefully those people pull other people through. I'm the pivot in a lot of people's lives.
Right.
Maybe too many people's.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to start shedding some people and kicking them out of my she shed. But I think that I just don't think that there's anything. We can be sensitive, and I can try to reframe things, and I can, if someone, like if God forbid, if someone had some kind of auditory issue, I know how to try to speak in a softer tone, or I would do that for them.
Yeah.
So just because I can't see what their problem is, I try to be sensitive to it. But also, you got to meet me halfway. I shouldn't have to mute who I am to make you feel better about yourself.
Right.
And that generation should know that too.
Right.
Right. So I think, hopefully the next generation, they're stronger than they think.
Oh, 100%. They are way stronger than they think. I think that's the key. I wonder too, sometimes I think about how we grew up, because we were all turned out into the yard and left to our own devices. If you were out in the woods and you fell out of a tree, you had to get yourself home.
For sure.
And by the time you got walking, you'd start going, oh, I'm actually feeling okay. I'm feeling better.
Well, they told us that in my house.
Yeah, you go walk it off.
Too far from your heart to kill you. Yeah, I mean, literally.
You just got to walk it off. But we've kept them so close, like I can't turn my kids out in LA and say, come back when the streetlights come on. You can't do that. That would be terribly irresponsible. So their opportunity to figure it out on their own doesn't happen the way it did for us, know. And in the middle of my kids' childhood, there was a pandemic. Yeah. So to double down on it, now not only can you not be turned out until streetlights come on, you can't go anywhere or do anything because you're going to die.
And you see them as individuals. We were seen as a collective.
Yes, it's true.
Kids. There was no individual personalities between any of us.
No,
there was so, I just, I feel like there's a lot to be said in listening. One of the problems it shows anymore is that some people don't want to listen. You guys are working at a way bigger level where they're listening, but there's always someone at almost every show I do. If I'm at a club, not at theaters, the small theaters that I do, but at the club, there's always someone who needs so much attention.
Right.
That they just can't be quiet. They just pop up like whack-a-moles and you have to get them. And sadly, it's usually women our age.
Wow.
Who feel like now we got to compete.
Right.
And I'm like, you didn't do this for 28 years. You're never going to beat me. You're never going to out heckle me. I've been heckled by my brothers since I was 10, 12 years old. I grew up with this nose. I never got it fixed. Right? I never. So you're not going to win. I don't know what moment you're looking for, but it's not going to be here.
Right.
And it's really tough how people.
Do you think that's an indication they don't feel heard anywhere? If it's mostly women our age?
I think that they just get too old to strip.
That might be.
I think that's just really it.
Too old to strip.
I think that's just it.
What I find interesting in dealing with my teenager, I don't know how you feel, and maybe this is part of being a teenager, and maybe I was exactly the same when I was a teenager, but I was perfect as a teenager except for the excessive drinking and lying and the promiscuity. But other than that, and the drag racing. But no, but I want them to be able to hold two things at once in their psyche. Like, I really want to meet my friends, right? But my mom is telling me, you have a D in math. Maybe you should address that. Let's address that before we do the friends. And the heel digging in that happens about the friends and the fight about how I'm wrong about the D, almost to the point of delusion because they don't want to see that other side, happens a lot. That may not be the best example.
You're saying that, like, if you find out they have a D and they want to go with your friends, you're saying they don't, or they want to stay away from their friends? Because
they want to stay with their friends. That's a bad example because with a D, you don't go with your friends till you have a C. Period.
But also the problem is they shouldn't show them. You know what I mean? Like these kids are constantly, that's the other thing. They constantly are seeing their grades over. The
agreed.
anxiety. Like
I agree.
show
with
it
that.
once, show it halfway through the semester or the 6-week grade,
Progress
whatever
report.
the grade. Give us something there. Every day they're checking it.
Yep.
Every day the level of anxiety, again, we're pushing these kids to a level of adult stuff. There used to be adult conversations and adult business.
That's a really good point, Tammy, because we got a progress report and a report card.
Yeah.
So you knew you had to kind of keep up with.
You knew if you were failing. You knew.
Yeah, you knew if you pass or fail.
Yeah.
I'm passing. Then I'm not going to worry about it. And then you're so right. I hadn't thought about that. How much stress it causes for them, and for I almost never check Isla's grades. I mean, almost never. The only time I check it is when a teacher will email me and say, hey, she has a D in this class, but I am not the normal. All my parent peers check their kids' grades at least once a week. How are my kid doing? How am my kid doing? And then they help the kids stay on track.
Yeah.
But I hadn't really thought about that. We just kind of got a progress report and a report card.
Well, I had to ban it from our house. I'll be honest with you, because my little Luca is brilliant. I mean, no one would expect that out of the two lerps that, and he's like Alex P. Keaton. Like he got straight A's for 6 years. Big kid, he's an athlete and everything else, but he was so nervous because this year he got a B.
Oh, gosh.
And finally I had to say, let it go. Let it go. B's are good.
Yeah.
That gives you somewhere to go.
Yeah.
You don't have to be perfect. I'm not that mom. I'm not a tiger mom going, got to have it. Let's get you. I go, forget it. I don't even know if college is worthwhile because you don't know what you want to do yet.
Right.
So let's not create this anxiety. One more thing for you to worry about. You're not allowed to check it. I go, I don't want to hear it. We'll check it. We'll check it halfway through the semester. And then we'll check it, and if there's a difference, you want to work hard between a B and if you're in an 89 and you want to be a 91, then we're going to deal with it. But I don't want to hear it anymore.
Right.
I don't want to hear that from you.
You're not the norm. We're kind of that way too. I'm a pass-fail mom.
Yeah.
I just need you to pass the grade. I don't care. You can pass with a 70, by the way. It's still a pass for me. As long as you're doing your work, turning your work in, and trying your hardest, being a responsible student. You just need to be a responsible student.
That's all.
That's it. I don't need
Society.
anything. I mean, my daughter has 2 study halls her senior year because she had a study hall, which she really needs because she's dyslexic. So for a study hall for her makes her homework time at home so much less.
Right.
So I'm all about the study hall in school. And then she had probs and stats, and she was getting a D, and her teacher reached out and said, she doesn't even need this math class to graduate high school. It's like an extra math class. So she can drop it. I was like a hot potato. Yeah. Drop that shit. We dropped it right away. Now she has 2 study halls. And I had a mom go, I can't believe you let her have 2 study halls. I mean, what does she do with 2 study halls? And I'm like, she doesn't need any. She is already meeting all her requirements to graduate high school. My kid's not going to be an aeronautical engineer.
Right.
She's going to be an interior designer. There's nothing there's nothing at school that's offered that she could take that works in her schedule. There's lots of art classes, but that doesn't work with the rest of her schedule.
Correct.
So then why am I forcing her to do anything?
I know. Well, we just went through this because I got to do this big show at TD Garden, Boston Garden. And I'm like,
that's amazing.
Right. And you remember how many times I said when we were on tour, I wish my son was here,
yes.
Right. So I was like, okay, he's coming. Now it comes at a time that I got to go in a day early for press. So he misses a Thursday, a Friday. The Monday, I ended up having to go to New York. So so he ended up missing 3 or 4 days because of this. And his teacher wrote me this thing saying that it was irresponsible.
Oh, please.
That he missed out. And I said, look, he learned more. I'm going to tell you the truth. We did walk around Boston. I showed him all this stuff. He saw where the Tea Party was. But you know what else he saw? Is his mother stand there and face 30,000 people.
Yeah.
And he saw that she created a career out of nowhere because her parents aren't legacy show business people. And he had some fun and he had some laughs. And he finally at an age where he could meet the colleagues. Because when he was 8 years old, he's not really I don't want him to listen to our
No.
friends' material.
No.
He's 15 now. I
Yeah.
was listening to Eddie Murphy
Yeah.
at 12.
Yeah.
Right? He can hear it now.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to sit next to him.
Yeah. No. Nope. Well, our kids were the same. Georgia and Isla had never seen Bert do stand up live until Fully Loaded 2022.
Yeah.
Never. And so Georgia was 18 and Isla was 16. And they'd never seen, not because we kept it from them for a long time. And then when they got old enough, they didn't want to see it.
Yeah, they're over it. I started doing this thing. I might even have one of Bert when Bert and Lonnie Love did Guy Fieri's grocery games.
Uh-huh.
I would have my friends who are comics tell a kid's joke to show him.
Oh,
This is
that's
my
great.
buddy Bert. So that he would know, because you can't expose them to the act, but I wanted him to know what I was doing.
Right.
And then we played a lot of those. We put them together during the pandemic when people, remember at the first part when everybody was sitting at home, and I would put those out for people to show their kids. Because I do think laughter is that's something too that is important to get through things.
Yes.
You know
it's
what I mean?
essential. Not just to get through things, but to learn.
Yeah.
I think that you learn better when you're laughing than if you're listening to a lecture or reading a book.
Yeah.
But if a comic can present an idea that's something you hadn't thought of or
Mhm.
something that's different than the way you think,
Yeah.
then you're more apt to learn it or to consider the difference in thought if it's presented to you with humor, right? Because clearly this country's pretty polarized, but politically. But if you can present ideas, non-political ideas that are opposite or different to what their ideas are and make them laugh.
That's what's so sad is you can't even talk about, in the old days, you could talk about, it was us against them. So no matter who was the president or who was in whatever political position, it was us against them. It didn't matter what your political affiliation was. We could talk about it.
Yes.
It's where the jester comes from. The jester made fun of the king,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes he died.
Yes,
You know what I
right?
mean? But so we can't do that anymore. And there's so many things. And just because I want to laugh at Donald Trump or just because I want to laugh at Joe Biden doesn't mean I'm choosing either side.
Right.
There's something funny in it. And you've crippled us because we should be able to talk about that kind of stuff.
Yes.
We should be able to say those things. There's humor when everybody takes things so seriously.
Yeah. It
You
is
know?
a shame because a Democrat there's a lot to laugh about Mr. Joe Biden. There's there's so many jokes to make about him. And it doesn't mean that you're against him.
No.
It just means that, you make fun of people because partly it's endearing, partly it takes the piss out of stuff so that you can think about it in a realistic way. And it's just fun.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
The first special I ever did that I got to name was called Finding the Funny because it was kind of like my thing to go, look, bad stuff happens. But if you don't find something, there's something funny in everything
Yeah.
that is going on. And you realize, I guess that's another thing about resiliency is that what's happening is there's nothing new. People have always the technology changes, our perception of it changes. We're inundated with it now. We know about it. But there's always been every bad thing that you talk about, there's always been something like that.
Completely. Yeah.
You know, there's always been something like that. So if we find a way to just get through it,
Right.
and if you can laugh at the same time, because eventually everything does have something funny in it.
Yes. You can find funny in almost everything. Almost everything.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
some of the discussions that we had about death I'm not going to do my bits here, but
Yeah.
are all my new material that my husband and I had about dying during the pandemic, because it's just ridiculous that that's what we have to talk about now, you know?
right.
Yeah, I would never do it here because this is not set up that way.
No. Well, that means people have to go watch your live to see it.
Oh, I would love that.
Yes.
I would love that.
Is there what should we tell people? How do people find you?
Go to Tammy Pescatelli. I know it's hard, but you'll figure it out. And then I have that I finally started a podcast. I've tried.
You did?
I did. It's based up on comedy and crime because my best friend is a retired police officer. She became a cop when I became a comic. So we were both in these male-dominated fields. And we started talking about that story because we kept talking about me dealing, the story I told you with the serial rapist and me feeling guilty with that woman. And she was around when I got to talk to her. And so we started talking about that. And then we realized there was a guy in Britain, a guy named Jimmy Savile, who was like the comic fodder. He molested over 500 people. He was actually knighted, and they didn't find out till after he died. So we talk about him. We talk about the woman who was Drew Carey's ex-fiance, who was brutally murdered by this horrible open mic guy.
Oh my gosh.
There's stories. There was a woman, Eurydice Dixon, who everybody should know about, this beautiful young girl who was an open micer in Australia. And on the way home from her gig, she was murdered.
Oh my gosh.
We talk about like Phil Hartman. There's a lot of stuff. We don't make fun of, it's called The Cop and the Comedian, a true friendship crime podcast. But we laugh at each other. There's a lot of humorous moments that are not at the expense of the crime.
Of course, yeah.
But, we laugh because we've been friends since we were 5 years old.
That's crazy.
Right?
The Cop and the Comedian.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And you have the best voice. I could listen to you talk all day.
Yeah?
Yes. When I see you on Instagram, sometimes I'll play it over and just listen to it. It's more like you. I'm like you. We grew up in listening to stand up.
Yes.
Delirious.
When you can visualize it.
Yes. I listened to it also more than I saw it.
Yeah.
So when I go through Bert's specials with him, I will just listen to a whole special without watching it. Like when we do something for Netflix.
Yeah.
Because that audio connection to me is important in a different way than the visual connection.
Well, good.
Right?
You can produce my next special.
Right? I love the audio part of it because, that's where you find the small, not mistakes, but that's where the flaws exist.
That's the heart. I think people say, well, like, are people acting out because of social media, because everybody needs a moment, blah, blah, blah. I think it's because they're watching, and nowadays you can watch something and do something else.
Yeah.
So even when they're at your show, they're not always fully invested.
Right.
When they just had to listen,
yeah.
Now they're listening hard because they're amazed to see you.
Yes.
So they just have to listen. It's a weird dynamic.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, as we've progressed in media, it is less listening and more watching.
Mm-hmm.
But the listening piece of it, the listening piece is when it gets really raw as a comic. When you just listen to a special, you can find all the flaws. And then you go, oh, okay, you've said that word 3 times in this hour.
Right.
Like a word like, I don't know, foreign. And you go, well, you don't need that you don't need that 3 times in this hour. But if you watch it, you're so busy watching it, you don't hear that you've used foreign 3 times in this hour.
Especially as an aging woman. If you're watching it, you're looking, oh my God, look at her. She doesn't look like she looked like when I saw her. And the first time I saw her, she was so young, and now she's old and da-da-da. And you missed the whole thing.
Yeah, you missed the whole thing.
You missed the whole thing because I don't tell jokey jokes. I kind of tell stories, and I do callbacks. So then when I do a callback, 20 minutes later, you're going to be like, that doesn't even make sense. Because you were trying to pick out how many wrinkles I had.
Right? The listening is the way. That's so cool. I'm so glad you have a podcast. Is it audio only?
It is audio only.
That's great.
I'm just starting out. I don't know any of this. I'm horrible at all of it because I taught myself how to edit it.
Why does that make you horrible at all of it? That makes you fantastic. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, I'm just learning the whole thing. Sometimes the theme music comes on and blows people's eardrums away. But I mean, listen, I'm just jumping in. We're just jumping. She was a cop. She was writing tickets to people and investigating crime scenes just a little bit ago. So we're just trying to figure it all out. We're doing the research ourselves, and it's just fun. I mean, it's not fun, the topics we're talking about, but it's interesting, the dichotomy of the whole thing,
Yeah, it's it's definitely one of a kind. Yeah. It's a very unique, original, idea and a great relationship. You've been friends since you were 5.
Yeah, that's our chemistry is solid. You know, I mean, I don't know. What am I going to talk about that hasn't been talked to death already? Right?
Well, the thing about podcasts, I think, in my opinion, is that people listening to a podcast want to feel like they're in a relationship with you in a certain way, that you're their friend, that you're in their house.
That's how I wrote my act.
Yeah.
8 years ago, I stopped and made a conscious decision to write every joke as if we're all old friends. I just haven't seen you for a long time.
That's the key to podcasting. That's what I look for in a podcast. Is I look for a podcast where I feel like I'm just sitting in the chair in the room with them, listening. True crime podcasts, true crime is different. But in you and your friend, since you were 5, she's a cop, you're a comedian, is more in line with I'm the third person in the room listening to this or part of this real conversation that's happening between two friends that happens to be about crime and comedy.
Yeah, like telling the story. Also, my radio background was really tough for me to get into it because at first, podcasting has evolved.
Yeah.
But at first, the ums and the ohs and it was tough for me to hear because I used to be called on the carpet for that all the time.
Right.
So now that I'm learning and going through all this stuff, it really makes sense. And I don't know. I don't know if it's going to work. Does it sell tickets? I don't know. I don't think but it's fun for me to get together with my friend.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated by these stories. So I got to imagine other people are. Like we did this guy, Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. Do you know that name? Like,
yeah, Fatty Arbuckle,
right?
yeah.
Do you know that Fatty Arbuckle made $1 million a picture in the 1920s?
I did not.
Okay. So he was huge.
Yeah.
Not just, but like huge.
Yeah.
$1 million in the 1920s.
It's insane.
Has this party with his friends. They're drinking. It's prohibition. A girl dies.
Oh.
They charge Fatty with her death 3 times. There are 3 trials because there were 2 mistrials and destroys him. By the time he dies, he's penniless. And that's where yellow journalism came from, like really fake news, because John Hearst, who started all of the newspapers, he owned all of the newspapers in the country, hated Fatty. He begrudged him his success and his money. So he wrote all these salacious headlines and really kind of pushed that narrative, which caused people to they burned Fatty's, like the negatives to his films. You'll never see a Fatty Arbuckle film. They're
my
gone
God.
everywhere. He's the reason why there are ratings on movies, because this morality clause came through Hollywood because of him. But who knew?
Wow.
And he was the number one
talk
comedian.
about that?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a great podcast. I can't wait to
we'll
to
see.
listen.
Hey, you should listen. But yes, thank you on the surface.
So do you have I'll talk about that later. But we should wrap it up.
Yeah.
But
hello, Charlie.
Time to wrap it up.
It's so good to see you.
I love you. Thank you for having me. That's so awesome.
I love you too. I felt like we connected immediately, and I felt like I'd known you my whole life.
Same. Really same.
That's good. That makes me feel good because I literally was like, I could just see her every day.
Same. I wish I was here.
I know, because I probably would see you very often.
I'd probably be sleeping right here, though, hiding from everybody when you're not. You'd have to be like, got to get up.
Tammy's here again. She's hiding. But come here anytime. Please come back another time. Let's talk again on this podcast another time, or we can just go to lunch. Either way.
Yeah, let's just go to lunch.
But Tammy Pescatelli, the cop and the comedian.
That's it. On the road, go to pescatelli.com. I'm never home, sadly, but that's where comedy lives.
Yes.
It doesn't live in my living room.
No.
It lives on a stage somewhere.
But not only are you a beautiful person, you are a fantastic comic.
Thank you.
So I can't
That's so
wait
kind
for
of you.
anybody who hasn't seen you live to see you live, because it's a good time. You're a good storyteller. And I'm so glad I know you.
Aw,
Thank you.
I love you. Don't make me cry. I'm supposed to be a tough broad. Listen, I feel the same. Thank you very much.